Good afternoon, everybody. I would like to welcome everybody to the October 31st meeting of the Ways and Means Subcommittee. At this time, please stand and salute the flag.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, at this thing, we're going to have a roll call of my subcommittee. I am the chairman, Michael Ferranti, here. Ms. Carol Ty.
Here.
Mr. John Kingston.
Here.
Okay, on the agenda for today, we have two items. One is the budgetary wish list, and the other is the staff appreciation. At this point, I would read to Dr. Kelly for her budgetary wish list.
Thank you, Mr. Ferranti. I had shared this list with the committee at your last regular meeting, and there were several items that we are hoping we can put forward for support, given that our carry forward was a little bit higher than we thought it would be, which is always a good thing. It demonstrates the fiscal responsibility that we've shown over the last year. The first one is for City Lab, which is hoping to do 2 mural projects at a cost of about $5,000 each. So the ask is for $10,000. There is a grant opportunity available that Dr. Mulligan is going to apply for, which means that we could get up to $5,000 of that back, in which case those funds would carry forward for next school year. The second is the robotics club proposal at the middle school level, and that's got a total cost of $4,800, just under $5,000. And that would be so that we could continue to have our high school students who are in the robotics club mentor middle school students, and really expand that program down to 6th grade. The program would actually take place here at Revere High School, where the clubs could meet together, but it would enable us to have an additional facilitator to organize the middle school students and work with Josh Miranda here at the high school to expose more students to those opportunities. The third request is for the drama program, which, as you know, we are just rebooting, having hired a new fine arts director, and the cost of this production would be a little bit less than $20,000. We're asking for $20,000, and feel like the cost will be right around that mark. It's already been budgeted out at about $18,600, and we acknowledge that this production would be more expensive this year than we anticipate in coming years, because right now we have zero infrastructure for this. But as we grow the program, we'll be able to establish classes where students will be doing set production and things like that in-house, whereas right now we have to contract out for those services. The fourth item is an additional kindergarten teacher for the Beachmont School, where we've seen a large influx of students at the kindergarten level. And that's particularly relevant at the Beachmont, where there are only 2 classrooms. So it's not like at the Garfield, where if you get 6 new kids, it means 1 child in each class. At the Beachmont, 6 new kids means 3 children in each class. And in fact, their enrollment has gone up by 16 students since the start of the school year. And so that's actually 8 more students to each class than what we had anticipated, and really does warrant a 3rd teacher. The fifth ask is for an additional social worker at the Lincoln School. I know that in her report to the committee last month, Jill Herwig talked about the Lincoln being the only school that doesn't have 2 social workers. Certainly, they have no fewer needs than our other schools do, and I think that would benefit the school community greatly to have that additional pair of hands and skill set available during the school day. The 6th request was for teacher supply support, and I had actually talked to committee member Ferranti about this prior to our last meeting, about creating a fund through which students could identify materials and supplies they need for their classroom, and then make some funds available so that they could actually get those. I talked to Mr. Cruz a little bit about that this morning, about how we might operationalize that if the school committee does vote for it, it would mean we would set up probably like through school specialty, maybe a couple of other vendors, and teachers would be able to select their items into a central database that then we could put one order out that would be tracked back to the individual teachers. And probably we would organize that at the school building level so that the principals can really work on some synergistic purchasing. The seventh one is a full-time para-pilot, which we had talked a little bit about. We're looking to put about 16 people, current paras who are working part-time for us, move them into full-time positions. So it would mean a bit of an increase to their salary of about $11,000 each. And then also we've budgeted for their healthcare packages if they need them. So this is one of the largest expenditures that we're requesting at this time. It's almost $500,000. It would mean that we could pilot this full-time program and take the rest of this year to measure the impact that has on students. We anticipate it would be a beneficial thing to students to have that level of continuity and ensure that where we are understaffed in paras right now, that we have full coverage where the kids need it. That price point could go down depending on how many people request medical benefits. But in no case would it be higher than that. And again, it would be for a pilot for the second half of the school year. And then the last item, oh no, I already did teacher supply. Yeah. Is that it? Why do I feel like I'm missing something?
No, that's 7.
Okay. So that comes out to about $784,000. And as Mr. Cruz has demonstrated in his budget here, we certainly have the funding to support that. I don't know if you want to just speak briefly to that, Matt.
Sure. So from my point of view, my job here is to take your directives and get them properly accounted for so we can get these things done. I gave you just a snapshot that if we were to go with what Diane just described, basically we already know what we're using for classroom teachers and had intended to do that in the budget. We want to keep at least $6 million in the district reserve to flow into the next coming season where ESSER pulls off. We would be allocating just over $1 million of the surplus carry forward to the things that Dr. Kelly just described, plus the 3 teaching positions we had spoken about in August. That would still enable us to add an additional $129,000 to the district reserve. So the numbers you're looking at here with no changes would give us, the punch list is hit, the teachers are covered, and we're bringing $6.1 million in reserve forward to prepare ourselves for the ESSER realities that are coming.
My apologies. I did not announce that other school committee members are here. Ms. Susan Gravelisi is with us, and Ms. Stacy Rizzo is on YouTube at the time. My apologies for not mentioning that when we had a roll call.
And the mayor has also joined on Zoom.
And thank you, Mr. Mayor, for showing up. Right now, I will open it up to my committee members. Any questions on the allocations from the superintendent, Ms. Tye?
John? Oh, you know, this is such a happy problem. This is not a problem that we have had, and it's a problem easily solved. We have vacancies, we have needs, and we have enough money so that we can meet the needs in the vacancies and increase the programs. I can't think of a happier quote problem to have. It's wonderful, and I thank the superintendent for being so careful, and Matt for making sure that we have always stayed within our budget, and to you, Mr. Chairman, and to all the members of the committee who have been responsible about all the way that we have spent the money. And we have this, for each one of these, I mean, just, I could go through each one and talk about how wonderful they are. You know, the City Lab down at the Beachmont School, the Beachmont School is kind of not in such great shape. It never did have a lot of vision from the beginning. And to be able to do a couple of murals down there and to make it look much more appealing will be a wonderful thing. The robotics, I know people all over the state, when we would travel more often over the state, have talked about our robotics. They used to perform down at the Sandcastle event, everybody down there was absolutely thrilled and admiring, and how can we get one of these in our school? I mean, that was another one, all of these proposals. And I'm particularly happy, as I'm sure the entire dramatic group from the SBA is, because one of the major complaints that I always got was, why don't we have something at the high school so that these kids who have been at the Susan B. and who have participated in the Lion King, which everyone loved, and it was so rewarding to watch that and see how talented our kids were. It will be wonderful that they can go on and use what they have learned there too. And to have a couple of productions. Another kindergarten teacher, I know from watching kids go in the Beachmont School when I've delivered a child in my neighborhood there, I know how mob that is, and a bilingual social worker for the Lincoln. What more could we ask for? Well, we can ask for teacher supplies, and I say yes, because I know that many of us look on Donors Choose and see how many of these teachers are out there. And I don't use this as a slur, begging for money, but that's sometimes what it seems that they're doing to help themselves in the classroom. They certainly should not have to be buying those supplies themselves. And when I was superintendent, I always felt bad when I had to take one job and divide it between two people and not give benefits to either one. And I think the children and the paraprofessional and the teacher all benefit when there is one full-time paraprofessional doing that job. I think that's a real support for the child in need. So I am enthusiastically in favor of spending this money for the purchase of these necessities.
Mr. Kingston?
I agree with every word Ms. Ty said. I'm happy to see the pilot program for the full-time paras. I think that's great. I know the Beachmont needs the teacher, and the other programs are great, and I also agree with the supplies for the teachers. I think that's great. The only thing I would ask Mr. Cruz, and for after the fact, if we would possibly get Amazon as part of that list. Amazon generally, for better or worse, generally beats things on cost, and it might help them procuring things at the cheapest cost possible. But I'm fully in favor of all the projects that were outlined, and thank you.
Ms. Gravellisi, any questions?
Thank you, Mr. Ferrante. I did have a question. I am in favor of all of the above choices. I'm definitely in favor of the full-time para positions. My question was, you have it for $480,000 for the second half of the school year, which obviously, if it's successful, will double when it's a full school year. And we'll be able to sustain that going forward in the budget, that dollar amount?
Well, I think that that actual amount would be for the whole year, because I
Oh,
started
okay.
thinking about this back in like September.
Oh, all right.
Right? I'm just thinking now that by the time we really get going, because we still have to negotiate with the Paras Union too, that it'll be January, right? By the time we're actually putting people into these jobs. So it really will be less than that. And then again, it depends on how many of them want to take the insurance benefit. That's a huge amount. If they take, we budgeted for each of the 16 to take a $20,000 family plan. If they take individual plans or don't take the insurance, that's going to make a huge difference for each one of them. But if we do decide, and when we talked to the paras about this before, we said this would be a pilot, and they understand this is a pilot, and that we would have to see what the funding is next year to see if we could sustain and support the program. My hope is that the additional Student Opportunity Act funding that we anticipate will enable us to do that, but time will tell.
Thank you, Dr. Kelly. I mean, I think it would be phenomenal to have full-time paras, and it'll definitely be a huge asset, not only for the students, but for the teacher as well. So that's not even that high of a price tag for a full year, so that's great.
All right, Mrs. Rizzo, any questions?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Ferranti. One is about the paras. We talked about 16. Last year when we talked about 16, they were full-time for kindergarten classrooms. Would that still be what they're being utilized for?
So I think right now we would have to go to the principals and see exactly where the need is. We were looking at really trying to fill some of the open para positions that we currently have, which are not in kindergarten classrooms. And outside of the Beachmont School, where we're looking to add the third kindergarten teacher, our class sizes have really been reduced. And when we had initially been talking about adding paras at the kindergarten level, our class sizes were running around 26, 27. Now they're at like 19, 20. So I think that makes a difference. But I guess the direct answer to your question would be I would want to ask the principals where they feel their greatest need is.
Yeah, and I would like to see the full-time, especially with the one-on-one students, just so that they have that consistency throughout the day.
Yeah.
That I would feel is very important. Also, one that didn't come up on this list, and we had spoken about it at the April meeting, was bringing on a special education coach, our C2C coach. And we said we were going to see what the finances were after the first of the school year, and I'm wondering where we are with that.
Yeah, I know that the special ed department would love to have a coach who can assist teachers, especially around differentiating instruction and giving that kind of help to the classroom teacher. So I'm not opposed to it.
Neither am I.
I can't make a motion.
Well,
Would anyone consider adding that? I mean, our math department has it, our,
We
we have
do-
so
we-
many.
we do have a
C2C.
little extra money in the unallocated money if we can hire a special ed coach. Do we have enough money in there, Dr. Kelly or Matt, if we went that route to hire a special ed coach?
Well, the 129,880 is yet to be allocated,
Right.
so all of that is available for mobilization. If not, it would flow into the reserve.
Then the question I have then, Dr. Kelly, would we have enough money to hire a special ed coach? Well, I mean,
Well,
but
and
we
that's the
need to know if we
key,
have the money.
Mr. Kingston just made, the key question is, can we find one? We certainly have special educators who would be phenomenal coaches and be able to help their colleagues, there's absolutely no doubt about that. We're having a real challenge filling our open special ed positions that we have right now. We've got two of them. One of them we thought we had filled last week, and that fell through. So I wonder if we're going to be able to take another special educator out of the classroom position to put into a coaching position and then be able to backfill them. But I mean, it would be phenomenal if we could do that. I would love the opportunity to explore it and try to do it. Just knowing that our priority would be to make sure that the students are taken care of and that all classroom positions are filled before we filled a coaching position.
Mr. Kingston?
I just want to be clear, I know you'd find a coach out of what we have, because we have some great special needs teachers. I have no question about that, and I apologize if anyone thinks we didn't. What I did mean was, could we backfill? And that's,
Yeah.
I want to be clear on that, because I don't want someone to say, oh, gee, John, we have plenty of people that could do the job. I know you do. It's
Yeah.
backfilling the position when you take someone out of the classroom, that's my concern.
I agree.
But I have no
Yeah.
problem if we put it in the budget, and if you can't find someone, we totally understand. But, at least it's in there, and maybe it stays in there next year, and it gives us time to look for someone. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Can I add, we talk about backfill, but, with teachers and educators, paraprofessionals are so hard to come by right now. I'm not sure why we might think one is going to be more difficult to backfill than another.
So, Mrs.
They're
Rizzo,
all difficult.
I guess the thing is that if we're going to attempt to hire a special ed coach, we have to add it to this budget as an addendum towards it, as an additional idea. Now, I need a motion, if we're gonna go that from the committee, if we're gonna, just put it out there.
Motion to have the superintendent look for a special needs coach.
Second.
All right. So, all right, and we'll vote on that due time. That, right now, we're gonna add that to another additional idea of have a special ed coach.
Thank you, I appreciate that.
No problem.
And, I mean, Dr. Kelly, if you want to discuss this with, Ms. Rizzo, I'm saying this, but she might not even think there is a need. So I don't want to do it over her head either, so if you and her can discuss and,
Definitely, I'll talk to her and I'll talk to Ms. Williams. I know that it was on the request list last spring from Ms. Rizzo and Mr. Pierce at the time to have one. So I'm sure she'll be thrilled to hear this. It's just going to be the matter of finding somebody. And I will say that when we hired for the EL coach position earlier this year, we identified the person who was going into that job, but said that we were not going to move them until we found somebody to replace them. So there is a little bit of a precedent for that, to make sure that we have our classroom taken care of, and then be positioned and ready and able and willing and have the funding to move forward as soon as we can.
yeah, to do that in tandem, make sure you have that classroom teacher first, and then you can, I think that's perfect.
You all set, Mr. Rizzo?
Thank you, I'm sorry.
No problem. Mr. Mayor, do you have any suggestions or any comments?
Sorry,
okay.
finding the mute button. No questions. Just as Ms. Ty said, this is a kind of a good problem to have, and I'm supportive of all these additional funding opportunities and being able to provide the best for our children. So thank you for all the great work.
I just have one quick question, and it might be directed toward Mr. Cruz. On the teacher supply support, if for some reason we don't use all the money, will it get carried over to next year? What's our backup plan?
Sure, right now what I'll do is I'll work on staff counts at each of the 11 school buildings. And it sounds easy, but then you have to include special ed teachers, Title I teachers, so that I can take the total amount and allocate it appropriately. And then I'd communicate with principals and say, here's what we're going to increase your non-salary budget by for that purpose. And then I'll ask them to flag incoming requisitions so we can charge it to that amount. And if they didn't get to that amount in this year, I'll have a note of what would be carried forward. But we'll do this vote in November. I think they will have ample time to spend everything that you're allocating to them.
Mr. Kingston?
Matt, and to kind of go with what you said, we're including everyone, like occupational people, speech therapists, everyone, all those, including the teachers, correct?
Right, so I'll put it together and have superintendents review it, but it won't simply be regular education classroom teachers. It will be anyone in that instructional series who is a professional in a building that now it might not come out to $200 a head, but it'll come out to an amount that if you have a staff member, here's your total because this is the number of staff in your space.
Okay, I just want to make sure they were included. Thank you.
Then just follow up on that question. If somebody uses more than that money, are we going to be able to make this work? If somebody uses $250 and, that's just what, it costs for supplies.
So, and that's why we're thinking that we're gonna put principals or assistant principals in charge of this. They'll have to monitor that. So the limit will be 200 per individual, but as I mentioned last month, that it might be that the grade 3 team at the Lincoln School decides they want to pool their $200 and make one bigger expenditure that the whole grade level can share. We want to have that kind of flexibility available to teachers, but it would be with the principal's approval.
This sounds like a good idea. All right, on the budgetary wish list, I need a motion and a second so we can vote on this item right now.
Mr. Chairman, I
Yes, Ms.
move
Day.
that we approve the wish, quote, the wish list that the superintendent has submitted to us in its entirety.
Second.
Okay. Right now, I'm going to do a roll call on the budgetary wish list. Myself is a yes, Ms. Ty,
Yes.
and Mr. Kingston.
Yes.
Okay. That will be reported out as positive, and it will go to the regular school committee meeting, I believe, on November 15th for a vote of the entire committee. Yes, Ms. Sure.
That's right. So at the November school committee meeting, we'll actually be voting a second appropriation to bring that amount of money into specific funds to be spent in this year. So that's why we can't just do it here. We'll do it as a full committee.
Yep, not a problem.
Okay.
Okay, the second item is the staff appreciation. Thank you. This was your idea, Mr. Kingston,
No,
so.
it wasn't. It was actually Dr. Kelly's idea, but I support it. So Dr.
Okay,
Kelly, go ahead.
Dr. Kelly then.
Yep.
Okay, sorry.
And I'll just say that I have no horse in this race, so to speak. I thought it would be a nice idea. I like the idea that we're doing for the teachers and other educators to make sure that they have the supplies they need in their classroom or their office if they're an OT or a guidance counselor. But I think about the rest of the staff and how we make them feel appreciated and part of a community, part of a family that is the Revere Public Schools. And so my original proposal, before we were talking about giving money to the educators, was to allow another piece of swag, I guess we were talking about, and maybe even making it such that people could go online and select something that suits them personally, to make it more personalized rather than everybody gets the same sweatshirt. So that was the idea that I had put forward, and I know that Mr. Kingston supported it. I know that there were others who had differing opinions, so.
I can only add that I support it. Actually, it's based on my time as a teacher, that every time groups of the city would go someplace, so the firefighters had their uniform and the police had theirs and some other thing had theirs, and there was nothing to distinguish that I was a teacher when I went there. And I think that is great for team spirit. It's great so that people can know that the other people with whom they are working, because in a system as big as we have, and with as many turnovers as we have, lots of times you don't know every single teacher. And I think that would be a really wonderful thing, to have that choice.
Mr. Kingston?
So I support it strongly.
I do support it strongly, and I do feel that it does build some community. I also think it does help with a little bit of morale and things like that. And based on my experience of talking to some staff, they felt it would be a welcome thing and they would wear it and they would like it. I do agree with Dr. Kelly, maybe possibly a catalog of some kind where we gave them a credit so we could kind of monitor the amount. So if someone wanted a polo or someone wanted a sweatshirt or someone wanted something else, a number of items to pick from. And with this credit, would allow them to buy, one particular item. And I think that might be a good way of working that out. So as Dr. Kelly said, not everybody's getting the fleece coat type of thing that some of them liked, some of them didn't like. This way you have a little more personal choice to be able to pick from a group of things. But I do think it would be helpful, and I think it would be good for the staff. Thank you.
Ms. Gravellisi?
Thank you, Mr. Ferrante. I'm definitely in favor of it. I think it was a great idea, and definitely giving the teachers a choice of, what they wanted to pick from the catalog is, I think will be, good for team building spirit. So definitely support that idea.
Mrs. Rizzo?
No comment.
Okay. Mr. Mayor?
apologies again. The mute button on my phone is being a little wonky. I support the idea. I think the idea of giving folks the opportunity or the option and having kind of a credit that can be applied towards whatever item they may want does make a lot of sense. And I think for some people it might be a golf polo, and for some others it might be a vest or a sweatshirt. But I think having that option is nice for everyone and makes the most sense. So thank you, Member Kingston, for bringing that up as an additional option. So thanks.
The only question I really have is this. We just added a special ed coach as an additional idea to our budget, which we only have $129,000. And believe me, I'm just looking at it from a monetary point and nothing else. If we hire the coach, this staffing could get a little bit to a point where I don't know if we can afford it or not, because we won't have any extra money. I'm for it, but I'm just a little apprehensive because $130,000 sounds like a lot, but it really isn't. And I'm just looking at it from that point of view. So we just have to be careful of what we do. At this point, I need a motion for this to approve the staff appreciation.
Mr. Chair, I move that we expend the money for the expression of our staff appreciation with some kind of clothing that they choose, that each professional chooses for themselves. Or catalog.
Second.
Okay. All right, right now, I am going to do a roll call on the staff appreciation. I'm a yes. Ms. Ty?
Yes?
And Mr. Kingston?
Yes.
That's the only two items on our agenda. Is there anything else that we need to highlight? Okay. I just voted on staff appreciation.
Oh, I did? I know. Did you vote?
Yes, I voted yes. I voted yes. All right, at this point, this will go to the full school committee on the 15th for a vote on both items. I guess Matt says we need to vote the money into our budget so we can take care of this. And any questions at this time from the committee members or the people here? All right, at that point, then I will close this meeting at 2:35. Quick roll call to close the meeting. Mr. Ferranti, yes. Ms. Ty?
Yes.
Mr. Kingston?
Yes. Thank you.
Meeting closed. Thank you all.
Good job, sir.